Formative assessment, I think, is just such an important feature of what we do as teachers. For example, I think it's about showing students and allowing students to look at what is good work, but how they can move their thinking forward and how they can develop their ideas. So, for example, it's about if you're just sort of assessing a piece of work and giving it a mark, that's not telling you a huge amount. It's telling you what that mark is and what grade that is. In a very sort of, it's very fixed. I think formative assessment allows students to say, okay, that's where I might be as a starting point, but how can I develop? How can I grow? How can I improve? And it's about allowing them to do that, to take ownership, and to understand that that piece of work isn't a finished, polished product. There is always more to learn and always more to get out of something. So I think formative assessment allows students to be able to do all of those things. It gives them that ownership, it gives them that independence, it allows them to question and to think carefully about how they themselves can make more progress. And as a consequence, it means that they're never satisfied, which is a good thing. They always feel challenged, and that motivates them. So I think formative assessment is an incredibly powerful tool. Self-assessment and peer assessment is used quite extensively in the classroom, and I think it again is incredibly powerful because it means that students, rather than the teacher saying, okay, I'm going to mark your work, or I'm going to assess what we're doing here. If you share with students the criteria, or if the students have ownership of that criteria and say, actually, a good piece of work looks like this, it's about modelling, and it gives students the ownership. They understand much more what makes a piece of work good, but also because they've understood that, they understand how to improve and how to make it even better. And there's some evidence to suggest that it's not just the person whose work is being assessed who improves, but the person doing that assessing as well, because they've had to internalise the assessment criteria. They've had to think quite carefully about it, and then they've had to explain to somebody else how to improve their work. It's an incredibly powerful tool for all students. I'm a teacher in the UK, in England, and I would say that formative assessment has quite a long tradition in the UK, and it's something that teachers, when it was sort of first introduced, did struggle with a little. It's something that you need to practice. And as you practice and you grow more confident. And I think what's been we've really noticed in the UK is that as teachers have thought about formative assessment more, as they've practiced formative assessment more, as they've expanded their repertoire of different ways of assessing in a formative way, so they've become more confident, and they see the benefits and the power of formative assessment, and that makes them want to know more and want to get even better at using the technique. So I think the fact that it has got quite a long history has meant that I'm very fortunate that I've seen a lot of formative assessment in practice, and it's effective, very effective. The key thing about formative assessment is that you need to use it to support what you're doing, and within the confines and within the parameters in which you're working. So, for example, I would say the most important thing about formative assessment is that you know why you're doing it, and you've thought about why you're doing it and what you want to get out of it. In terms of the actual action and the process, it can be as small or as large as you want it to be. So, for example, formative assessment can be incredibly quick. In the classroom, you could have a question, you could have whiteboards. Each student writes an answer, one word on the whiteboard, holds it up. It's 10 seconds. If you want it to be more of a sort of iterative process, it can be 20 minutes. It could be, it depends on what you want to use it for. But I think the most important thing is that it doesn't have to take a lot of time. But what you do need to know is kind of why it's important, why it is that you're doing it, and try and get as much as you possibly can out of that experience. Initially, when formative assessment was introduced, there was quite a lot of training on formative assessment particularly. I think now there's some training as when teachers train to be teachers. We have a training program in the UK, and so that there's some input there. But I think as well, it's about teachers taking ownership and saying, okay, I want to get better at this. How might I do that? So it's about practice, and it's about them trying things out in the classroom. And sometimes those things don't work, but that's okay, because sometimes they're incredible and they're powerful. And it's about the teacher saying, okay, actually, it didn't work. How could I do it differently next time? Rather than saying, it didn't work, formative assessment doesn't work, I'm not doing it again. It's about building up and practicing different methods of doing formative assessment.